kids can impact us psychologically. She'll have you reconsidering how you take and receive redirection in a very Ramsey way with a lot of depth and a little humor. She is advised by Dr. McLean. Please welcome Ramsey.
I stand before you here today in the Quest Center. And while most of us never used this space growing up, because it wasn't built yet, I want you to use your imagination for a second. Think back to when you were the same age as the kids who come in here today to learn. Between now and then, you have had so many teachers and coaches helping you grow. In addition, you've also gone home with your parents, grandparents, maybe aunts and uncles every day. That is a lot of adults shaping the person you are. Now, while each of these adults has a different role in our life, we typically put them all under this umbrella of parenting. We're talking about scientific literature. Like any other social trends like fashion or politics, parenting trends have existed for centuries. In the 40s and 50s, Dr. Benjamin Spock published his book, Baby and Child Care, which has become sort of the it guide for parenting, and by today it's sold over 30 million copies. In this book, he was the first person to establish these radically liberal ideas that parents should show warmth and affection to their children. In the 60s and 70s, we see the Vietnam War, hippie movement, armpit hair does as it pleases, and so do kids. Kids barely spend any time at home, and they're raised by their awesome older siblings. In the 80s and 90s, we see a rise in female empowerment, sending women into the workforce and subsequently raising rates of divorce in single-parent households, meaning kids spend even less time at home. I guess all this absent parenting caught up to these kids because from the 2000s to today, parents value closeness and time together more than ever. Technological breakthroughs like Life 360 and Find My Friends mean that parents can be right on top of their kids all the time. But more technology has revolutionized parenting than meets the eye. Brain scanning and MRI technology has given scientists the means to scientifically examine how adults' words affect the adolescent brain right now and in our futures. I want you to think of your brain like your childhood backyard. You take the same route through it every day, and eventually you start to see a path wear down. Instead of picking a new path one day, the one you've already created becomes your default. It's the one you automatically take. The same is true with your brain. When you use certain pathways in your brain recognizes that and works to strengthen these pathways in a process called neural pruning, which takes place during our middle school and high school years. Now, the opposite is also true. When you neglect to use certain pathways in your brain recognizes that and closes those pathways in order to conserve energy and resources for the pathways it knows it needs to use. Something that makes adolescence, when I'm talking about pathways, I'm talking mainly about two types, positive and negative pathways. Positive pathways are pathways that are initiated when we feel positive emotions like happiness or excitement. These are located in the prefrontal cortex of your brain, which is responsible for critical thinking, problem solving, and motivation. Negative pathways, as you can probably guess, are pathways that are initiated when we feel negative emotions like fear, anxiety, or sadness. These are located in the amygdala, which is responsible for your body's automatic functions like breathing, heart rate, etc. Something that makes adolescence unique is this phenomenon called neuroplasticity, which literally means molding or forming the brain. As many of you know, the adolescent brain is not fully developed, which makes it especially susceptible to change. Now, as we get older, our brain's level of neuroplasticity decreases, which means that changes can take place very easily during our childhood, but those changes are much more difficult to alter or reverse later in life. Something else that's unique about adolescence is how many outside influences we have. This is a time in our life we're trying to develop our identities and discover who we really are. Simultaneously, we also have all of these adults also trying to tell us who we are. Typically, we put all of this feedback under this umbrella of constructive criticism. Whether it's a coach telling you that it looks like you're driving a dump truck when you're running, or a teacher telling you that you have to start turning your work in on time or she's going to have to deduct points, or a manager telling you that customers can see your facial expressions. All of these adults give us feedback in order to make us better. But few of us have heard of constructive criticism's lesser known evil twin, destructive criticism. I don't know the difference, so I'm going to assume you don't either. Explain it to me. A kid goes to track practice, and he's running sprints. Gets two track coaches, one standing at each end of a 100-meter length. He gets in the line and runs to who we'll call Coach 1. This was not a great rep for this kid, and Coach 1 lights him up. I mean, rips into him, starts telling him that He has zero work ethic. He has a terrible attitude. He's always like this. He shouldn't bother coming to practice if he's not going to put forth any effort. Feeling a little bit dejected as these words stimulate his negative pathways, he gets back on the line and prepares to run to Coach 2. He does so, and Coach 2 takes a little bit of a different approach. He says, hey, okay, I like it. I can see that you're trying. You're doing your best. Your speed and your strength are here. Maybe bring your elbows in a little bit and drive your knees. That should help you. So he feels a little bit better about himself. He stimulated those positive pathways. And he gets on the line and prepares to run back to Coach 1. This was his best rep yet. I'm sure you can probably guess which approach is which in this situation. Coach 1 uses broad generalizations to describe this individual's character when talking about his running performance. He also gets historical, talking about the past and not talking about this instance as one isolated situation. Additionally, he approaches the situation with a very negative attitude, which translates into how the student receives this information. Coach 2, on the other hand, keeps a positive attitude and manages to encourage the student while also acknowledging that there is room for improvement. Both are possible. This is my mom. I want to explain to you guys that while adults typically fall into one category or the other, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to take these approaches. Sometimes we have bad days. Every day for probably the last 18 years, my mom has told me that I have terrible fashion sense. And 12-year-old me would stare back at her wearing my basketball shorts, Birkenstocks, and young green frog t-shirt and be like, what's the problem? So when I was researching this topic, I explained to my mom, you're telling me that there's a problem, but you're not giving me any way to improve. She said, okay, throw away your Birkenstocks. Just because you think you're a hippie doesn't mean you have to dress like one, never get bangs again, yada, yada, yada. I didn't listen to my mom. She grew. When giving constructive criticism, adults, you're going to want to do a few things. Step 1, identify what it is someone needs to improve. Without doing this first, why are you going into this situation? If you don't first identify what someone needs to improve, the rest is kind of pointless. Step 2, create sort of an informal script in your head of these specific means of improvement. This is arguably the most important part of giving constructive criticism, because without these, how does someone know how to fix their behavior? Step 3, take a deep breath. As a former 4th grade YMCA volleyball coach, I understand that little kids can be annoying, but it's important that we calm ourselves down, step out of the situation in order to approach it maturely. Because when you're giving criticism, you're training these adolescents' brains to respond to failure. Now, destructive criticism can also be characterized. If someone approaches you, kids, and they're visibly riled up, it's probably a good indicator that what's about to follow is going to be a hurtful and unproductive conversation. If you or a loved one have been a victim of destructive criticism, fret not. Here's Ramsey's step-by-step guide how to respond to criticism of any kind. Now, I should preface by saying that if you recognize that someone's behavior truly is destructive, ignore it. Don't internalize that, because that's going to become your natural habit for the rest of your life. Now, I should also add that criticism is a vital part in every stage of life. Whether you're a 2nd grader learning how to not spit on people, a middle schooler learning that there are consequences for your words, or an adult learning adulty things like how to work well with others in the workforce, criticism is vital in every stage of our lives, which is why it's so important to learn when we're young how to respond to it and receive it. When someone approaches us with criticism, our body's natural response is fight or flight. When our bodies go into fight or flight mode, our sympathetic nervous system tells our brain that we are in danger. All of our energy goes into focusing on how to get out of that situation as soon as possible. And if an adult has taken the time to build some constructive criticism to give you, it's important to listen. Like I said, it's crucial. So when you feel your body having this response, take a deep breath. Take a step out of the situation. Remind yourself that this is going to be a valuable experience. It's going to help you grow. Retraining your brain to have this reaction is critical. Additionally, scientists have discovered that asking questions when in a conversation about criticism can be extremely helpful. It can tell your brain, hey, I'm okay. No wild animals chasing me, I'm fine. And it can also help you clarify what it is someone is trying to tell you. We often fall victim to this overthinking pattern in the wake of a conversation about criticism, and we can think that someone gave us destructive criticism when really everything they told us was perfectly in line with the constructive model. By retraining our brains, we can transcend the barriers of comfortability and become the very best versions of ourselves.